So the only place I could think of starting was that article that you wrote for, oh, Christ,
It was Dissident Voice and
Yeah, right.
also Popular Resistance.
popular, yes,
Right.
popular resistance.
Yes.
And in
Hmm.
that first paragraph,
Hmm.
because I was thinking, we see polls, exit polls, that international stuff, international relations, is only important to like 4% of the populace. And I just don't believe it because I think with globalization, you're the choices we made are either affected by the choices, the kitchen table situation, the kitchen table things we choose from are either affected internationally, affected by international relations, or affect international relations somehow. And in your first paragraph, you say choices made over sundry domestic issues have far reaching effects, far beyond local pocketbook or civil rights issues. They determine who lives and who dies across the planet and how much pain, harm, and suffering the rest of the world here. So, could you kind of expand on that and then we'll go into specifics, the thousand specifics we got to talk
Uh,
about?
Yes. The point that I'm trying to make in that article is when your average American goes to the polls, they are electing their next domestic president, and they're also selecting the emperor of a violent global imperium. And who you choose depends on, as I said, who dies and who lives, and how much pain, harm, and suffering the rest of the world will have to bear. And because of that, it's fair to ask who is the lesser evil, Trump or Harris? And I said that, of course, the answer is neither. It's like infinity when it comes to evil. There's not much use in finger counting, which is greater or lesser. They're cardinal equivalents. And that's why I said that third party is the moral choice. That said, what I said, and this was written before the election, I said that President Kamala Harris, to the extent that she has institutional continuity with the Biden administration and retains its key advisors, is likely to wage more wars in Ukraine and most certainly with China. And then regarding Trump, I said Trump is not less hawkish or more prudent, but he's likely to be less effective. And I said, it had to do with, the reasons of distraction, obstruction, and opprobrium, that there will be a lot more resistance to anything that he wants to do. He has a large internal agenda, which really has to do with settling scores and undoing what he considers to be, culturally depraved measures inside various government institutions. And then I also pointed out that there was a kind of transactionalism, this kind of bean counting mercantilism that he brings to foreign relations that could actually obstruct some of the alliances that the US has painstakingly cobbled together in preparation for a war. And I mentioned Korea, I mentioned Japan, I mentioned Taiwan, and then the last thing I said that, and I want to point this out, I want to emphasize this: Trump is not anti-war per se,
mhm.
but he is against losing wars. He's not against war, but he's against losing wars. And so that puts some parameters where he might be less inclined to engage in a full-throated geostrategic war against a peer competitor. And
I
so,
think what I heard one commentator, how he described Trump, which is similar to what you're saying, is Trump is risk averse.
yes, I agree with that.
But if he doesn't have anyone in his circle who knows enough to tell him this is a stupid idea, then he may not, he may find himself in a situation that he regrets.
I agree. I agree. The analogy that I've given is, there's the kind of overpraised, overvalidated child. And these children, they tend to avoid any challenge. that reveal the limits of their false competence. And likewise, Trump is less likely to test the outer limits of US power with competitors, with peer competitors. So, I call this the McCain stain. He doesn't want the McCain stain. He sees that anything or anyone that is a loser is something that he doesn't want to be associated with. So then we can ask the question, what does this mean for China? What does this mean for Ukraine? Certainly for Ukraine, it would signal some kind of winding down, although the devil is always in the details. And then for Israel, we can ask the question, is Israel also having its own John McCain moment? That is to say, it is engaging in this constant stream of genocidal atrocities, but it's also a strategic and political loss for the colonizer that has literally been taken hostage by its own insanity. So I think that there is a kind of a wobbler that could go either way. The key risk, and I think you've just pointed it out, is that the greatest risk with Trump is that he may not understand the real risks of nuclear war. In the past, he said, why have nukes if they can't be used? And he could be very recklessly tempted or prompted to use them. Now, this is in the context of the existing neocons who actually already believe in using nukes. They believe in integrating nuclear war seamlessly, conventional doctrine, into exercises, signaling, and operations. And so there's a real risk there. But it's, they're both risks and they're different types of risks. And so one of the kind of mitigating factors for Trump is his neo-mercantilism, to the extent that it may obstruct some of the relations that he's trying to build, or that the US has been trying to build with its proxies. And then the second, measure may be his own kind of narcissism. And this kind of extreme narcissism may act as a brake against some of the worst impulses of empire, which is perverse. But, this is the cunning of reason, as the Hegelians would say.
So if I can hear you, if I hear you right, we might accidentally, from an international standpoint, be better off with Trump.
It's a long shot, but I think it's worth mentioning, and I emphasize the accidental part. So yes, I mean, here's the thing: we shouldn't overestimate the power that the president has. It's like the pilot on an airplane, right? The pilot takes the airplane up to 1,000 feet, and then from then forward, it's on autopilot, pretty much. And then when the plane lands, the pilot takes over for, 500 feet. And in between, the takeoff and the landing, most of it is on autopilot. And the passengers have the choice of chicken and beef and of what movie you want to see, right? That's essentially what's going on. So I don't overestimate the fact that the flight plan has already been set up. The institutional powers, the national security state already has its agenda. But even so, it's possible to mess that up with a bad pilot too.